The moment I realized my husband was stealing from me, the strange thing was that I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone across the room. I didn't call him in rage. Instead, I sat quietly at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, slowly, cooling in my hands while the notification from the bank glowed on my screen. $5,000 had just been transferred from our savings account. At first, it looked like nothing unusual. Mark and I had been married for 10 years, and over time we had moved money around between accounts many times. But something about the timing caught my attention. 11:48 p.m. Mark had been asleep beside me at that time, so I opened the banking app and began scrolling through the last few weeks of transactions. $10,000, $3,000, $7,000, luxury, hotel charges, flight bookings, restaurant, bills that looked far too expensive for business meetings. The deeper I scrolled, the more the truth began to settle into place. Mark wasn't just spending money, he was living another life. And the worst part wasn't even the spending, it was whose name kept appearing on those reservations. Samantha. I had met her once at Mark's office. Holiday party, she had been introduced as a new colleague in his department. Pretty confident, the kind of woman who laughed a little too easily at Mark's jokes. At the time I thought nothing of it. Now I stared at her name appearing again and again on those hotel reservations. And suddenly everything made sense. The late nights, the business trips, the sudden overtime meetings, the strange way he had started guarding his phone. My husband wasn't just cheating on me, he was funding his affair with my money, you see. Mark always liked to joke that my small consulting business was just a hobby. My wife's little side project, he would call it when talking to friends. But the funny thing about that little side project was that it paid for almost everything in our lives. The mortgage, the vacations, the savings account. Every dollar in that account came from my work. And Mark had been quietly draining it to impress another woman. That night, I didn't confront him. Instead, I closed the banking app, finished my coffee, and waited for him to wake up the next morning. He walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened. "Morning," he said casually while grabbing toast from the counter. "Morning. Busy day?" "Pretty normal." He kissed my cheek and headed out the door 10 minutes later, just like he always did. For the next 2 weeks, I said nothing. I watched, I listened, and I let Mark continue believing he was getting away with everything. People become careless when they think they are clever. Mark became very careless. The spending increased: luxury restaurants, spa bookings, flights. One afternoon I opened the account and nearly laughed. $32,000 gone. For a moment, I imagined confronting him right then, throwing the statements across the table. But I didn't, because Mark had made a very important mistake. He believed the savings account belonged to both of us equally. What he didn't understand was that the account was legally tied to my business, which meant something very important. I controlled everything: the cards, the permissions, the transfers, and the moment I decided to act, his access would disappear instantly. The opportunity came 2 weeks later. Mark was leaving for what he called a conference. He packed his suitcase carefully that morning while humming to himself. I already knew the conference didn't exist, but the resort reservation did. 5-star oceanfront hotel, 3 nights, very expensive. Right before leaving, he kissed my cheek casually. "Back Sunday," he said. "Big meetings?" I smiled politely. "Have a good trip." The moment his car disappeared down the street, I opened my laptop. The banking dashboard appeared on the screen. It took less than 3 minutes. I froze the credit cards, canceled the account, permissions, and transferred the remaining balance into a private account under my company. Then I waited. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. "Mark." I let it ring twice before answering. "Hello?" His voice sounded panicked. The card declined. "Which card?" "The one for the hotel." I leaned back in my chair. "Did the bank block it or something?" "No, I did." Silence. "What do you mean you did?" "I closed the account." "You can't do that." "Yes," I said calmly. "I can." His breathing grew heavier. I'm standing at the check-in desk right now. Are you? Yes. Is Samantha with you? The silence that followed lasted several seconds. How do you know about her? Mark, I said quietly. You spent $32,000 on your affair. I thought I deserved to know where the money was going. You've been spying on me. No, I've been paying attention. In the background, I could hear Samantha asking him something. What's wrong? Mark lowered his voice. They want payment. Of course they do. You have to fix this. No, you're humiliating me. No, Mark, I replied calmly. You did that yourself? There was a long pause. Then his voice dropped. You're really not going to help me. No. You wanted to use my savings to impress another woman. So now you can use your own. That evening, Mark came home much earlier than planned. Alone. Apparently Samantha had found her own ride back from the hotel. He walked into the house slowly. For the first time in years, he looked uncertain. You ruined everything, he said. I shook my head. No, you did. He looked around the house like it suddenly felt unfamiliar. You took the money. No, I said softly. I took back what was mine. Because the truth is, betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in a bank notification, a hotel receipt, a name appearing where it shouldn't. And sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't dramatic. It's simply taking away the one thing someone never expected to lose: stock control. Because the moment Mark decided to use my savings to fund his new life, he forgot one very important detail. The money was never his to spend.